Great.
Yeah, hi, Valerie, and all the viewers who watch this video. It's great to communicate with you again and connect with you. This is the first of my Sunday. I've called them the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. Simply because, based on Alice in Wonderland, where she went to visit the Mad Hatter and he started telling her all sorts of things which she couldn't understand. So, yeah, in a sense, this is kind of imitating that. But the purpose of these meetings is going to be to try to make the teachings of the bioenergetic mechanics and spirituality more practical, useful, and applicable to everybody. So each Sunday I'll choose a topic and then draw from the theory of the courses that I do, and to translate that in a way that we can apply to our everyday lives. Because it's important that we not only understand the principles involved, but it's very important to be able to apply them. And to do that, we need to engage in conversation around that, and to see how it applies to different situations, and how it applies to the experiences we have in our reality field, in our holographic reality field, and how we can change the experiences we have in our holographic reality field in order to serve the whole, the oneness of everyone. And it introduces a lot of new ideas, new concepts as they apply to practical everyday living. So today I thought what I'd to cover is some of the posts that I've been doing recently that I call Collapsing the Wave. And people don't understand this, so I'm going to explain the theory behind it, and then we're going to look into how we can practically apply those principles to our everyday lives. Now, on this planet, the narrative that we hear is controlled by the satanic controllers here. Excuse me, I've got a dog barking. No, it's going to and through the media, but it's not just the media. It starts from the time we begin our education, through religion, education, media, the activities we involved in, and the systems that work, around this planet that don't work for us, but they can work against us, and how we can stand up against those principles. And understanding the principle of collapsing the wave will help us to understand the environment, the spiritual environment in which we find ourselves, and how to avoid the pitfalls of that environment so that we can do something called collapsing the wave. Now, how this is done, and you'll understand this, Valerie, if you take one tuning fork and you hold another tuning fork in your other hand, you bang the one tuning fork, the second tuning fork will start to resonate without being banged. So there's a transfer of the vibrating waves of energy from the first tuning fork to the second tuning fork. And the human soul is a living, vibrating thing. It's more than just a thing. It's a living life experience of vibrating energies. And these vibrating energies are measurable, and they are apparent, but given very little recognition. And that, as you will know well, it's our thoughts and emotions that are the vibration in our soul bodies that control the frequency of our soul. Now, every soul vibrates at a unique frequency, so no two souls are identical. So this vibration that we vibrate at, this frequency we vibrate at, is unique to us, and we can control the amplification of that frequency. Now, frequency and amplification are different. Frequency measures the number of times you vibrate per second. Amplification is the height of the wave that is created. So we can be influenced at which frequency we're going to vibrate at, but we can also control the amplification of that frequency. And that is through the expression of ourselves. You know, loud people make a lot of noise, and that amplifies sound, and it also amplifies their waves. But also, quiet people can do the same through their thoughts and emotions. They don't have to be loud people. They can be very quiet, but they can still increase their amplification of their waves through breathing, through correct thinking, through self-control, through emotional energy, which is a sound wave, and they can amplify it. Okay, so being a living soul is a very dynamic experience. You know, it's not just as we think of as having a personality and being an individual and being influenced by, you know, what we have been taught, by our history, by the way we were brought up, the way we were inducted into our societies and what the societal norms were, but it's actually very much based around our choices. But we don't understand that we make choices complicitly, where we agree without actually agreeing, by explicit agreement. So we are influenced all the time. Now, the influences around us are vibrations. You know, news, information is a vibration. Information comes through an electric wave. An electric wave is a light wave. So in the soul body, it represents an electric wave. Sound is a magnetic wave, and it represents the magnetic wave represents sound in our soul body. So we need to learn how to think and feel properly, because light waves determine our thoughts and magnetic waves determine our emotions. And the sad thing is, people here think they are not in control of their thoughts and their emotions. And that is because they never taught how to control their thoughts and emotions. You know, in the Bible, they talk about the fruit of the Spirit, and one of them is self-control. And self-control means you are able to control yourself. And controlling yourself means controlling your thoughts and your emotions. Now, what happens here on this planet, people get this news, the narrative that's created from outside of them. They begin to vibrate. In other words, they take on board that vibration that's created outside of them. They begin to vibrate. And when they vibrate at the same vibration, they increase the size of the wave. So we become amplifiers of bad news and sick news if we take it on board and pass it on, because the little tuning fork sitting next to us is going to actually start vibrating at the same frequency. And that's how that lockdown and the COVID menace worked. Basically, they bombarded us with this information. People started expressing fear. They started wearing the masks. They started staying at home. Some people took it to ridiculous levels where they, would, every time they went out and came home, they sanitized themselves so they wouldn't affect their families. They did some crazy stuff. And that was all because they took on board that vibration that was around them. And that that ability to vibrate gets passed on without us even knowing about it, without us even being able to be aware of it. So that's how this mass hypnosis psychosis was created in such a short space of time, because it just needed some government official, a World Health Organization person, or someone in the CDC to make a statement that you have to be careful because this virus is deadly, and if you catch the virus and you catch COVID, you're going to die, or there's a chance you will die. And there were many people dying, but of course, the numbers of people dying didn't match what we were being told. But only a few people would notice that. People who decide that they're not going to believe the narrative and actually do their own research, and they find out this is all nonsense, which I did. I just looked at the numbers, and the chances of dying from COVID were less than dying from an aircraft accident. And know how infrequent those are. Your chance of dying were less than the chance of being murdered. In South Africa, for instance, we have a very high murder and rape rate. So, but our governments never create a state of disaster around rape and aircraft disasters, or, and so it just seemed crazily impossible to believe what they were telling us, yet everyone was doing it. And I was simply amazed. And I sat back thinking, now, energetically, how did that work? And it worked simply by this ability to transfer negative energies from one person to the other without them even being aware of it. It's just a vibration thing. And so we have to learn, because how waves work, if you take a wave that is at a certain resonance frequency, and if you have electric wave, for instance, at a certain frequency, and you put out the same magnetic wave at the same frequency and synchronized, that wave gets increased and it gets passed on. Now, that's how the radio was invented by Marconi. He went to Nikola Tesla, and the two of them worked on it, and they realized that putting out a single wave of electric energy would not be carried to a transmitter unless it had a carrier wave. So they created the carrier wave, which is the magnetic wave. So you have two forms of wave coming out, and the one supported the other. And to their surprise, it magnified the electric wave. So the two waves working together increase the size of the wave. Now, that's what we have in our societies today. When people take on board and agree, and they begin to vibrate and have the same frequency of this message they're receiving, they increase the size of the wave. So the size of the wave gets amplified. And as it goes on along the line, we have this massive, belief system of some, deadly event that might happen. And it just defied logic in a sense. But once I looked into it, I thought, no, it doesn't defy logic. It is quite logical. That's what's going to happen. People are going to react, get this information without examining it, without doing their own research, and they begin to vibrate at the same resonance as the message they're receiving. And then they pass that on to the next one, and that each one amplifies the wave. It's a matter of physics. That's how physics works. And the opposite is there's an axiomatic to that, that if you receive that, you hear that wave and it comes to you, you can collapse that wave by putting out an alternative wave that collapses that wave. Because when one wave meets the bottom of another wave, the top of the wave comes down and collapses onto the bottom of the wave. It flattens the wave. We can see it in our oceans when you get two competing waves come together and they collapse on each other. They hit the bottom of the wave and they become flat. But the opposite is true. If they come together and they flow over each other, they make a very big wave, and that creates more disturbance in the water. So it's very important that we, as soul warriors, learn how to collapse that wave. And there are three things we can do to collapse that wave. The first one is to be authentic, because we vibrate at our authentic soul vibration. And our soul, authentic soul vibration is the person that we really are, not the person that we pretend to be. And it's very important. And I remember doing a course with you and Jeff Cloud, Valerie, where we looked at that specifically. How does one control one's thoughts and emotions in order to get and understand your authentic self, so that you don't believe the narratives of the history that you've had. You don't believe the narratives of the doctors and lawyers and sociologists and politicians out there. You actually are able to just look, carefully examine your own thoughts and ask the questions, where does this thought come from? Is it from me, or is it from my indoctrination? And the same thing with our emotions. Do I understand my emotions? Where does this emotion come from? Can I feel that vibration? And when I first became aware of this, I was aware that I was not even aware of my emotions. What I was feeling was actually a conditioned response to circumstances outside of me. So I had to awaken my emotions and begin to feel again. And that is what is called emotional intelligence, when you actually are able to feel your emotions. And so by careful scrutiny of your thoughts and emotions, you can create your authentic self. And this can be a very tough experience, because when I first went through it, I began to realize that there were things about me that I'd been hiding for a long time, that I was so afraid of to expose them to people, that I was hiding all these emotions and feelings and thoughts that I was having. And because they were irrational and I couldn't understand them. And it's only through careful examination of your thoughts and really understanding whose thought is this? Who put this thought in my mind? What voices am I hearing in my head? And as you do that, you will begin to remember a teacher, a sibling, a friend, an advisor like a priest or a minister, a teacher, somebody out there telling you something that you believed, and you believed it about yourself. And so you created this image of yourself that is not your true, authentic self, because it comes from outside of you. Your true soul resonance is what is inside of you. And it's only by examination of your thoughts and emotions and discovering which are my authentic thoughts and emotions that I can then begin to authentically express myself. And that is a very, very difficult process. I don't know if you had that experience, Al, where you suddenly found yourself wanting to say something or do something, you realize, well, that's not authentic. That's not how I feel. You meet people who annoy you, and you kind of sit back and you hide yourself away instead of confronting that person and look at them and say, that's very strange behavior, um, or looking at them. And like today, I had somebody, I was talking and somebody burst into the room and started yapping away. And I said, do you mind? I was busy telling somebody something and you interrupted me. So I'd like you to, wait until I finish what I'm saying. So I had to stand up for myself. I couldn't allow myself to just be, you know, um, broadsided by this person. And standing up for yourself is what we're going to speak about next. But that once you discover your true nature and your true vibration and who you really are, you become a very powerful person because you learn the power of the word no. And so many times in my life, I went along with things. I didn't say no, and it just got me into big, big trouble. And it got me into situations that I didn't really want to get into, but I was prepared to get into because I didn't have the balls and the guts to stand up for myself and say, no, I'm not going to do this. And so learning the power of the word no is very important here. Because so much of what society expects of us is an unrealistic expectation. And what it actually is someone else telling you who you should be and what you should be like. And overcoming that is very, very, very difficult. And so, but it's not impossible because I've done it and I've seen other people do it. And I know that it puts one into a position of power over self, where you take back your own power. People say that, oh, Pete, you should take back your own power, but it's never explained how do you take back. Mm-hmm. And we take back our power by really realizing who we are, accepting that, and working with that. And say, within that limitation of who I am, I'm going to express myself. And I'm not perfect by any means, as far as everyone else's expectations are concerned, but I'm perfect in the sense that I am who I am. And that is my sovereign right to express who I am. The second thing that's very important in terms of being your authentic self and being able to collapse a wave is to have a high sense of standards and values and morals and ethics. When you have high standards of morals and values and ethics, you expand yourself and you grow yourself into a more powerful, authentic self. And the problem here is generally we live in societies that have very low standards, ethics, morals, and values. And we see it all the time, the people just go to war and kill other people, as if it's just a matter of, it doesn't really matter. Or we have bombers blowing up aircraft or people blowing up the towers, on 911. And we think, oh, well, that's just everyday stuff. It's okay to blow up stuff. It's okay to go to war. It's okay to murder people. It's okay to rape people. And so with being bombarded with all these low ethics and standards and values, we don't decide for ourselves what our own standards and values are. So we go along with this nonsense that comes at us all the time. Our government here in South Africa is totally corrupt. And it's a criminal enterprise. And it's coming out now how much they've stolen, how much they've destroyed our country, how much they've enriched themselves at the expense of the people of our country. And it's happening all over the world. And I see it happening, in countries like Italy recently, Holland, or the Netherlands recently. And it's starting to happen all over the world. It'll hit the United Kingdom soon. I can see it happening in the United States of America. It's happening in Brazil and all over the place. So it's very important for us to have high standards and values. And I will elaborate more on these in the future. Because when we get into discussions about life and living, those will be that will be our key points. The next thing to do, the third thing, is to exercise your sovereign right to be. And so the first thing is knowing who you are. Secondly, have high standards and values. The third thing is exercise your sovereign right to be. So there's no taking a back seat and letting other people tell you how things should be if you don't agree with them. And we all have rights that come from God. All men are made equal and have endued rights which are given by God. Okay, so other people don't give you rights. You have rights that come from God, and understanding that is very important, because that's in that was how the Magna Carta was developed, and how the American US Constitution was developed, and our own constitution in South Africa. But we so easily give over our sovereignty to other people. And we're going to talk about this in the next week, about the systems that they've developed here that are designed for us to give up our sovereign rights to a nanny state. So we hand our responsibility for ourselves to somebody else to run our lives for us. And within that, we are able to manage ourselves. And that is not sovereignty. And sovereignty starts with the individual, and then the sovereignty overflows to the community, and it flows over to the society, and it flows over into cities and states and nations. And why does sovereignty work at that level? Because in order to be sovereign, you have to respect the sovereignty of other people. A sovereign being cannot say, I'm not going to allow you to be sovereign, but I want to be sovereign. And that's tyranny. And we are not tyrants. We have to respect the sovereign rights of all people and see them as having the same rights that we have. And we are required to protect our own sovereignty, but not infringe on the sovereignty of others. And that's a very, very difficult thing to do sometimes, because, we so want to do things for other people or help people. So we break their sovereignty and we take control of their situation without allowing them to express or invite us into their space in order to assist them where they want it. But if a person doesn't want it, then you would break their sovereignty, if you just go and change their lives for them without, a mutual respect of sovereignty. So sovereignty is a two-way street, and it works both ways. So next week we'll delve deep into that, but I think at this point in time, I can see that what the beloveds are doing, and through us, and I'm not just talking the beloveds in the higher dimensions, I'm talking about people here on earth who's standing up for themselves and saying, hold on, we don't agree. We do not agree with what's happening. And that's how we're going to change the world.
Totally agree.
Yeah, that's how you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. So we are going to eat little bite-sized chunks every week, and hopefully after a period of time, these videos will assist people to understand their authenticity, and examine their standards and values, and what standards and values they will accept and what they won't accept, and how to be sovereign beings. and how to exercise their sovereignty in a societal way that is beneficial to all. And that is what freedom living is all about. So I love you all, and thanks for being here, Val, and thank you to all the listeners who are going to be listening to this, and I'll see you all again next week. And until then, love you all, and bye-bye.